Real quick, Arsenal season review is in the works, so do not worry. It will come out probably within the next week or so. I'm trying to make it as good as possible, so please just bear with me in terms of time. Roll the tape.
Previously on Keeping Up with the Madridistas. After many years, the French golden goose Kylian Mbappe was finally at Real Madrid. Joyous cheers could be heard from the same fans who held Mbappe 0 Champions League jerseys just a year prior. But we'll just ignore that. However, Real Madrid forgot something very important. Literally every other problem the club needed to deal with. And because of the club's neglecting of its midfield and defense, they went trophyless for the first time in 4 years. But this season would be different. With Ancelotti gone, Real Madrid brought in the best young up-and-coming manager in the business, Xabi Alonso. Alonso himself is a club legend and would now be returning with his tactical expertise. A match made in heaven. But who's to say heaven isn't just Real Madrid? Going into the transfer window, the club made sure to put in some great work, as they always do. Madrid last season quite literally had no competent left back, so they bring in Alvaro Carreras, who actually used to be part of the youth academy. He spent 3 years, left on a free, and is now back having cost the club 50 million. Nothing but the best business practices here at Real Madrid. With the center-back depth consisting of 2 injury-prone players, EDP and Antonio Rudiger, there was desperate need for a new option. So in came the highly rated young defender Dean Howson, a man who, despite being linked with numerous clubs, always knew Real Madrid was his end goal. Just goes to show when Real comes knocking, your players will never be able to resist. All of last year, the Madridistas had to be subjected to Lucas Vazquez at right back, not even being comes even close to how bad of a punishment this is. But while this torture was unfolding, the storied club was working on an important mission behind the scenes. Operation Rage Bait Liverpool fans. And by the summer, Real Madrid reached their end goal of dealing with the defensive liabilities by acquiring a right back that can't defend. Finally, Madrid needed someone who truly aligns with the club values, so they brought in a right winger named Franco.
Hey, but what about the midfield? There's still no Toni Kroos replacement, and also now your other experienced midfielder, Luka Modric, is gone. Nah, don't worry about it. Real Madrid began the Xabi Alonso era by winning their first 7 games, but it all wasn't that pretty. With the squad having no proper preseason, Alonso would basically have to experiment with the team during the start of the campaign, which as a result had Madrid scratching past a lot of opponents they really should be wiping the floor with on paper. And no game was more evident of this than when Marseille came to the Bernabeu for Real's Champions League opener. Los Blancos were struggling throughout, but fortunately they heard the birds singing. By no means was this actually a penalty, but I fucking hate Marseille, so I'll allow it this one time. 2 weeks later though, Real experienced a rude awakening at the hands of Atleti. After going 2-1 up, they conceded 4 unanswered to their rivals. It was Real's worst loss to Atleti since 2015, and you'd have to go all the way back to 1950 for the last time they conceded 5 against them. With this loss as well, Xabi Alonso's men dropped to 2nd in La Liga behind Barcelona. However, Barcelona suffered an embarrassing loss in the following week, which allowed Real to hop back to the top after a bounce-back win versus Villarreal. The league leaders then caught and compromised FBI's most wanted terrorist, Jose Bordalas, as Mbappe scores the only goal in a survival campaign for Getafe. Which, speaking of, amidst the uncertainties and struggles, Mbappe was fucking killing it. Up to this point, Mbappe had scored at least 1 goal in all but 1 game. And that's definitely the form you want to have entering your first Clasico of the season. Thanks to goals from him and Jude Bellingham, Mbappe for the first time as a Real Madrid player finally got the better of hated rivals Barcelona. And after a couple months of growing pains, it seemed like Xabi Alonso's Real Madrid were starting to finally figure things out, as they were now a season-high 5 points above 2nd place. And then November happened. Following a 4-0 destruction of Peter Lim's self-sabotaging project to start the month, Real Madrid struggled throughout the rest of November versus some pretty mediocre La Liga sides. They failed to score versus Rayo Vallecano, had to scratch a late equalizer versus Elche, and needed a penalty to save them from losing to 18th place Girona. Meanwhile, in the Champions League, things were no different. Thibaut Courtois saved Real from conceding like 5 goals versus one of the worst Liverpool sides in recent time, and then later in the month, due to a bunch of injuries and Courtois having the stomach flu, Mbappe's godly form saved this team's ass versus Olympiacos. But that was just the stuff on the surface, because reports had actually come out about how there was discontent between Xabi Alonso and some of the players in the dressing room. You see, when the manager first joined the club, he quickly instilled a stricter day-to-day regimen and had his team playing a more demanding and disciplined style of football. And this control over player schedules and the lack of freedom on the pitch left many players upset. There were even reports that some players were claiming Alonso's approach was unfair because they had won so much already without the manager, while others were apparently dissing him, saying, quote, "He thinks he's Pep Guardiola, but for now he's just shabby." How are these guys so entitled when they didn't win a single thing last season? Now this was all not so great, but the relationship between Xabi Alonso and Vinny Jr. was far worse. This year, Vinny's role has seen a lot less freedom, a lot less minutes, and he's been pissed about it. Things really blew up when during El Clasico, he stormed off the pitch screaming after being subbed off in the 72nd minute. Vinny later apologized for this on social media, but conveniently left out any mention of Xabi Alonso. Then, after being left on the bench in Real's 2-2 draw with Elche, Vinny Jr. personally told the club he was holding off on any contract negotiations because of his relationship with Xabi Alonso. This club is actually a headache. Who the fuck would subject themselves to this? Having dropped points in 3 straight league games, Real Madrid found themselves back in second to start December. Nonetheless, Los Blancos finally ended their winless run with a convincing win vs Bilbao. But then just 4 days later, they were stunned by Celta Vigo at home, and of course, this isn't a Real Madrid season unless they have beef with the referee who won't bow down to their every command. Anyways, Real Madrid continued to underwhelm severely as just 3 days later, they lost vs Man City in the Champions League, and now Xabi Alonso's job was really in danger. In his next match vs Alaves, it was looking like his last for the club after his team conceded an equalizer with less than 25 minutes remaining. Fortunately though, Rodrigo came in to save the day and his employment. However, 3 days later, things got even more egregious, as in the last minutes of a Copa del Rey match, Alonso was saved from an embarrassing choke job versus a team fighting to stay up in the 3rd division. And then, just when you thought things couldn't get any worse, on the morning of New Year's Eve, Kylian Mbappe was diagnosed with a knee injury. And this could not have been worse timing, as Real Madrid's only reliable source for goals would more than likely be out for the Supercopa now. But despite Real's second best scorer only having just 5 goals to his name, it didn't really seem to faze him all that much. Los Blancos destroyed Real Betis 5-1 with a 21-year-old Gonzalo Garcia scoring a hat-trick, and then Xabi Alonso's men got some revenge for Atleti to get that one step closer to the team's first bit of silverware since 23-24. However, they would have to beat a familiar foe to do so: Barcelona. With injuries to most of his defenders, Xabi Alonso decided to set Real Madrid up in a back 5 in order to soak up pressure and release on the counter. It worked for a bit, but the backline was so dysfunctional and inexperienced that it quickly showed signs of breaking and eventually did, conceding in the 36th minute. But fear not, madridistas, because with no Mbappe, Vinny Jr. was able to finally play with more freedom again, and took full advantage of it with a brilliant solo goal right before halftime. Unfortunately for him though, Madrid's backline decided to pull a me during Arsenal-Liverpool and fell asleep before the halftime whistle actually blew. The whistle still hasn't blown yet though. Now 2 minutes over the designated 3 minutes of stoppage time, Real Madrid once again find an equalizer. That is now 3 goals in 4 minutes. Absolute chaos. However, that Madrid defense just won't stop letting everyone down, as no one bothers to close anyone down, and with the help of EDP's touch, Los Blancos concede a 3rd. Nonetheless, this team will not quit. Fast forward to the dying minutes of the game. Carreras has an opportunity from point blank. One last opportunity now. Corner delivery bounces to Mbappe, and it's EDP with the free header. And so Real Madrid lose to Barcelona and fall short once again. This is Real Madrid we're talking about, by the way, so of course there was some drama after this team failed to win a trophy again. After the game, Xabi Alonso was trying to get the team to join for a Champions Guard of Honor, to which Mbappe, who played the last 15 minutes of the game, protested and told his teams just to walk back to the dressing room. Now, I know what you're saying. Oh, it seems like the entitled players are doing entitled things again. Not necessarily, actually. This wasn't really that big of a deal, just a simple disagreement. I say this because only a month ago, players like Jude Bellingham and Thibaut Courtois actually spoke out in support of their manager. Also, it seems like Xabi Alonso was slowly starting to let off a little, saying in mid-December, quote, "I've learned things and adjusted myself. Got to know things, adapted. The players, too. It's a process. We're always evolving." Even though it was a tough loss and Real honestly played like Getafe the entire time, the future did seem to be bright, and it was only a matter of time that Los Blancos would finally lift the trophy again. Though, he's just left the club. That's right, folks. Xabi Alonso simply had enough of the constant bullshit he was having to deal with and left the club. I know there's gonna be headlines that say Real Madrid sacked him. I really doubt that. Now, was Xabi Alonso's tactics a little bit questionable from time to time? Absolutely. But the whole point of bringing in a manager like Xabi Alonso was for him to be the future of the club. But despite no preseason organized, the depth still being dog shit, Xabi was seemingly expected to turn shit into gold overnight. And on top of all of this, Xabi was basically fending for himself against a bunch of entitled little fucks because the club who claimed that this guy was the future didn't bother to actually back him whatsoever. They didn't back him against the players, they were trying to get in some medical staff that Xabi Alonso didn't want to work with, and also transfers. Forget about it. I mean, it's no wonder why he left after just 30 games. My guy is free now. But if we're being honest with ourselves, this really is just the Real Madrid way. Club president Dark Lord Perez doesn't see Real Madrid as a club, he sees it like Hollywood. It doesn't matter how shit the movie is, they got the A-listers on the red carpet. We've also mentioned this before, but this club loves to make itself out to be a victim. All the fucking time. Remember when Real Madrid TV went after an official which made them cry during a press conference because their family was being affected? And then the club itself responded to this by threatening to boycott the Copa del Rey final? Well, after Real's 2-0 loss to Celta, Real Madrid TV decided to go after the official in that game too. Even being clowned on by the entire universe last season, they still have no shame. So of course the players themselves won't have any either. Real Madrid is just politics and image. That's literally it. There was actually a report that Xabi Alonso probably would have stayed until the end of the season had he not had some disastrous results. And the players saw this and were just kind of concerned about their image. Guys, you have an injury crisis going on. Like, you can settle for a little bit sometimes. Again, this was an up-and-coming manager for the future, and they gave him no time. The club didn't give him any time, and especially the players didn't. So, what's the future for Real Madrid now? You know, who's gonna be the new coach? Alvaro Arbeloa. Apparently his philosophy, by the way, revolves around gegenpressing. Good luck trying to fucking tell your players to do that, holy shit. And even if Arbeloa gives in to the players' demands and lets them play freely and whatnot, basically just let the players decide what they want to do on the pitch, they did that last season. And look what happened. And that's not even considering the lack of depth this squad has and the fact there's probably not going to be any reinforcements added this January, which is going to be fantastic for the club, because again, they're going through an injury crisis. Also, Real Madrid just brought back Antonio Pintus, the guy who was responsible for a good amount of the injury crisis last season. So, I'm sure that'll end well. By the way, while I don't think this was entirely on Mbappe this time, it is pretty funny that he's basically brought the losing culture he personally instilled at PSG to Real Madrid. Have fun with him, guys. Now, while Real Madrid's defense is just pure comedy, and we all wish for it to continue for pretty much the rest of time, you don't want to go through that same kind of humiliation, right? Well, why are you using Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi, unprotected? Real Madrid drama in the dressing room being leaked is one thing, but you're literally risking your personal information. Stop that. Be protected. Be Surfshark, baby. Surfshark uses humanized privacy and security solutions to safeguard your data, meaning you can now browse the internet safely without any stress of someone stealing your personal information. By the way, for future hate watchers, you can bring Real Madrid to your home even closer than you ever thought possible, wherever you are in the world. Because recently it was announced that La Liga would be broadcasted on YouTube for free in Brazil. Well, you know what that means. Today, I feel Brazilian! And this is all thanks to Surfshark's over 4,500 servers in 140 different locations. Surfshark also has some new features this year, including one that detects email scams. So, have I got you excited now? Well, if so, you can use my link display on the video or in the description to get Surfshark for an extra 4 free months. And there is no risk in trying this out because Surfshark has a 30-day money-back guarantee. So, use my link surfshark.com/Mac to access region-locked content anywhere in the world and keep your private information safe. And a big thank you, as always, to Surfshark for sponsoring this video. Last time on Meet the Madridistas. After going trophyless throughout all of last season, Real Madrid hired up-and-coming manager Xabi Alonso. The former Real Madrid player had a lot of promise going into the job, with many believing he'd be in charge for a long time. However, only a few months into his tenure, the new manager started to realize just how entitled the players were, he was never backed fully by the club during these conflicts, and began to regret signing that contract. He then reached his breaking point after Real Madrid lost to Barcelona in the Supercopa final, and left. In his place came Real Madrid B coach Alvaro Arbeloa. Yeah, the season's wraps. His first game, though, would be a pretty easy introduction to start this campaign, as Real Madrid would play 2nd Division club Albacete in the Copa del Rey. Oh, and they've conceded to 2nd Division club Albacete. It's fine, though. Even the best have their hiccups, and Real Madrid quickly respond before the end of the half. And once the second half began, it was only a matter of time for Los Blancos to complete the turnaround.
And Betancourt!
Did I ever mention to you guys this team is in the 2nd Division? Ah, you Madrid haters, you still haven't learned, have you? No matter what, the remontada is inevitable. Into stoppage time, corner for Los Blancos, and Gonzalo Garcia saves his team from humiliation. And although it hasn't looked pretty, Real in the last minute looked to put an end to it here. Wait, hold on, where's the defense?
Can't control, but he can still get there. There's no one in support. Still Betancourt. And still Betancourt!
Just when you thought Real Madrid's humiliation couldn't get any worse, they get eliminated from the Copa del Rey by a team that at the time was 2 points away from the relegation zone in the 2nd Division. Having now lost 2 of their 4 chances at a trophy in extremely embarrassing fashion, Real Madrid returned to a chorus of boos from the supporters. Real Madrid TV, hearing this, decided to pull an EBU and mute the crowd. They are truly never beating the allegations. And reportedly, the players and management reacted to this saying, quote, "If you only applaud in glory but fade away in defeat, you are never one of us." These guys are so unlikable, Jesus fucking Christ. To be fair, Real Madrid still won that game despite the boos, and then made quite the statement, putting 6 past Monaco in the Champions League. That saw them move up to 3rd in the Champions League table with 1 game left. And in that match, Real Madrid started off well, with Mbappe opening the scoring. However, the defense being as shambolic as it had been, then conceded 3 unanswered by the 54th minute, forcing Mbappe to do all he can to carry this sorry-ass team again. But even his efforts weren't enough, as Los Blancos were put to bed by a header from Benfica's goalkeeper. As a result, Arbeloa's men fall outside the top 8 and would have to play an extra round in the knockouts. It should be mentioned, by the way, this all happened in the month of January, and January has a transfer window. And with Real Madrid once again facing a bit of a crisis in defense, they'd be looking for some solid reinforcements, right? Of course not. They chose a right winger over Zubimendi in the summer. What makes you think something changed over the last 5 months? Arbeloa's men were able to string up a pretty good run in the league though. Against Villarreal, Mbappe scored 2, including a Panenka penalty that he dedicated to Brahim Diaz after the Moroccan missed his during the AFCON final. Now, some people might see this as Mbappe and his leadership. I'm sorry, this is fucking psychotic. That's like if your dog of 11 years just died all of a sudden, and when you tell your friends, they send you a picture of their still alive pet. To begin February though, Los Blancos had to scratch a win versus Rayo Vallecano via a last-minute penalty. At home. Performances at least improved from there, as Real Madrid would extend their league win streak to 8 straight since December 14th. And with Barcelona losing to Girona on matchday 24, Real Madrid's win versus Real Sociedad would take them top of the table with a 2-point advantage. Soon after, the Champions League returned with Real Madrid getting some retribution in Benfica, but that was far from the main storyline with this match. After Vini Jr. scored, he did a little dance at the corner flag and then stuck it to the fans like anyone would if they were being chirped at the whole game. Benfica's Gianluca Prestiani wasn't too happy about this, so he allegedly called Vini Jr. a racial slur. Very normal behavior, of course. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail about this whole situation because I already did in a solo video, so check that out if you want. Anyways, before any second leg opportunity for Real's players to jump Oompa Loompa Ellen DeGeneres, there was a match in Osasuna, where once again the defense would show less composure than the time I was on a date while on 20 milligrams of Adderall. Medvidi should have never prescribed me that much. Fortunately for the mighty Madridistas, Vini Jr. under Arbeloa over the last few weeks had been in prime form, and he bags a goal for a 4th straight time. Seeing this, Dani Ceballos decides to show off some of that Arsenal banter era play. EDP plays him onside, tries to save the day, but instead
gets sent packing for the island, and Real Madrid's defense again proves unstoppable for all the wrong reasons. The torment wouldn't stop there, however. Mbappe had been feeling discomfort in his left knee over the last couple months, and it was starting to bug him again during a training session, so he was now going to be out for at least a month. And get this, it's probably got something to do with Real Madrid's medical team allegedly diagnosing the wrong leg. That's right, back in December when Mbappe originally picked up an injury, the medical staff found nothing to be wrong. The Frenchman then proceeded to play through the injury for another 3 games before feeling discomfort on New Year's Eve. I just want to ask, right, if this was really the case, you are one of the richest clubs in the entire world. Like, is your medical team just the actors from Grey's Anatomy? Are your leading doctors the Good Doctor and Johnny Sins? And now that I think of it, who the hell gave the green light for Mbappe to play in the Supercopa and then onward? Like, it's no wonder why this team keeps going into an injury crisis every season now. Anyways, with that loss versus Osasuna, Real Madrid dropped back down to second, while Mbappe would miss the second leg versus Benfica. Just 13 minutes in, Camavinga has a lapse in concentration, all hell breaks loose from there, and Real Madrid concede the equalizer. Guys, this is the one time the whole world is kind of rooting for you, and this is how you repay us?
Valverde, pull back for Chouameni!
Okay, I apologize. I spoke too soon. A la Madrid, glory to our Dark Lord. And as long as Vinny Jr. stood tall, and he always does in the face of discrimination, the blood of racists and their defenders would be spilled. Baila on their graves, Vinny, baila! Brother, read the room. Are you fucking stupid? And you reposted it? Despite the result, Real Madrid were pretty underwhelming as a whole, and that became more the case about 5 days later, when they fell victim to terrorism ball in their own stadium. I do want to ask something though, how was this not even a yellow? With that loss though, Los Blancos are now 4 points below league leaders Barcelona. Even more bad news though, another player down as Rodrigo's ACL goes kablooey because for some reason he was allowed to play through an injury he picked up during the game versus Getafe. With morale down even more now, Real Madrid were just hoping to not make it 3 straight losses. Chouameni was up to that task as he bagged yet another goal to boost the Madridistas' moods. But not even 20 minutes later, we get what everyone fully expected when this signing was made. Classic Trent defending. Real Madrid were once again pretty in this game, but fortunately they had luck on their side and grabbed a late winner off a mean deflection. Divine intervention or not though, that goal was crucial in their hunt for the league title. Meanwhile in the Champions League, Real Madrid would play Man City for about the 8 trillionth time in the last 4 years. Los Blancos had already lost to the Citizens months prior, and with how everything was continuing to go to shit, everyone saw this as being a cakewalk for Man City. Everyone besides Federico Valverde. In just 42 minutes, the Uruguayan puts on one of the iconic Champions League performances this tournament has been known for, carrying Real Madrid on his back with a first half hat-trick. Real Madrid go on to win this one 3-0 and then put a dagger in the tie with 2 more goals in the second leg to advance 5-1 on aggregate. But it simply can't be that easy because after the triumph, it was announced that their ever so reliable keeper Thibaut Courtois would be out for 6 weeks. In between the 2 legs for City though, Real Madrid did something they haven't done in like 800 eons. Start multiple youth academy graduates. And they did it because they had like 9 senior players out, but I mean, still. They did it. And they all impressed in a 4-1 victory versus Elche, with the likes of Thiago Pitarch impressing and Dani Yanez collecting an assist for himself. Then in the Madrid derby versus Atleti, Real collected a 5th straight win with the help of a fully rejuvenated Vinny, who had now scored 10 in his last 11 appearances in all competitions. His success reflects a much better relationship with the manager, and that's spread throughout the whole dressing room as well. And a lot of that probably has to do with the fact that, you know, Arbeloa isn't exactly like a Xabi Alonso, he's the complete opposite. Do we consider that a yes man right now? Just give it some time. Let this one ruminate. However, the power of friendship can only do so much when you have so little discipline, and Los Blancos' win streak comes to an end at the hands of Mallorca. And that sees Real Madrid's title hopes take another massive hit, with them now 7 points behind Barcelona. On the bright side though, the game versus Mallorca was Mbappe's first since late February, and he would be back in time for their tie versus Bayern Munich. But listen, okay, I know I sound like the most annoying broken record when I keep saying this, but it cannot be understated how ass Real Madrid's defense is. They nearly conceded 2 within the first 30 minutes, and Alvaro Carreras was getting absolutely skinned alive. Eventually, Real Madrid's luck ran out, Los Blancos got absolutely carved apart, and conceded in the 40th minute. Then, just 20 seconds after the break, Real Madrid's defense basically just watches Bayern put another in their net, and this game is basically over. However, this is the famous Bernabeu. You know the saying. 45 minutes in the Bernabeu is a very, 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 very long time, and you especially can never underestimate the dynamic duo of Mbappe and Vinny Jr. You actually very much can, though. Mbappe and Vinny had some good chances, and were unlucky to be facing a Manuel Neuer who just doesn't age at this point. They looked better, but not together. And that's been the issue for the last 2 seasons now. Because this shit just does not work. You got 2 forwards that like to occupy the left side, so you get shit like this sequence where their opponents barely have to spread out, so Mbappe is shooting from this angle. And don't get me wrong, Mbappe is one of the best forwards in the world for a reason, but this is just not a good shot selection. And then you get moments like this when the two are obstructing each other. I mean, look how fucking close they are to each other. This all said, Mbappe did manage to score, so this changes everything going into the second leg, as Real only need to score once to tie it all up. And that's made even simpler with Agent Neuer gifting Real Madrid an aggregate equalizer not even a minute into the game. Los Blancos concede a corner 5 minutes later though, and it's back to square one again. However, it didn't take long for Real to once more restore the lead on the night, and the tie on aggregates. But upsetting the favorites away from home wouldn't be easy, especially if you have Trent Alexander-Arnold in your backline. Nonetheless, Real Madrid's attack have been hungry. Vinny gets unlucky with the crossbar in the 40th minute, but then just a minute later, here comes the Brazilian again, and he leaves it on a golden platter for Mbappe. It's all tied at 4. Now, not to take away from this performance by Real Madrid, it's probably their best in a long time. They knew they were the inferior side, but worked to their strengths, which was holding strong in defense and then countering with that blistering pace up top. That said, only once did this actually work, with the other goals being a phenomenal free kick and a brainless mistake. Once the second half arrived and their opponents decided to actually lock in, Real Madrid were absolutely dominated. The defense was still doing a pretty solid job at the back though, so hey, all it takes is just one more goal from that dynamic duo. Outside of that assist to Mbappe, Vinny Jr. was awful in this game, and Mbappe was just not even passing the ball to him most of the time. This duo did fuck all in the second half. In fact, Real's most effective chance in the other 45 was a combination between Mbappe and Trent. All the while the attack was looking only more effective than Arsenal's, Alvaro Arbeloa decided to sub on Eduardo Camavinga in the 62nd minute. The Frenchman's had an awful season so far, being responsible for multiple defensive errors, but here was an opportunity to prove the doubters wrong. He proved them alright. Less than 20 minutes into being subbed on, Camavinga picked up a yellow card for a tactical foul. Then about 10 minutes later, he fouls someone else, but avoids the second yellow because it would have been too soft to send him off there. He then proceeds to time waste immediately after that little foul, and receives his second yellow, meaning Real Madrid would have to play the rest of the game a man down. Do you hear that? It's the music again.
Pavlovic, Luis Diaz, yes! Michael Olise. Davies is forward with him. Olise! That's how to crown a magnificent victory. Winners on the line.
And with their draw against Girona putting them a whole 9 points away from the league leaders with 7 games to go, Real Madrid are more than likely going trophyless for a second straight year for the first time in 16 years. And of course, this isn't a Real Madrid video unless the players are complaining about the ref immediately after the game. Multiple players were even recorded saying the ref's decision to send Camavinga off was a disgrace. Listen, he was literally let off the hook and then immediately decided to time waste. That's on him, alright? Can y'all just look at yourselves in the mirror just once, please? Also, how funny for Arbeloa to say the same thing, when he was the one who made the decision to sub on a guy who had been showing a lack of concentration all season long.
It's a very tough exit from the Champions League for Real Madrid. Maybe one of the biggest clubs in the world. The expectations are so high. It's going to be, maybe a season without a title. What has to change to get back to the best of Europe?
Well, we are Real Madrid, and We won 15 times.
This is just insane delusion, but it's not like it's surprising or anything. It's Real Madrid. Their own fucking TV network was claiming they were, quote, totally superior. It's like I'm listening to my government say Trump wasn't in the files, man. I've also heard people say something along the lines of, oh, well, the referee's decision made the game worse. He ruined the game. He shouldn't have done that. He broke the rules. What the fuck are you talking about? Anyways, people are probably now wondering, what's next for Real Madrid? If you look a little closer at the La Liga standings right now, Real Madrid's goal-scoring record is closer to third place Villarreal than it is to the league leaders Barcelona. Stats like that just show us further proof this whole Mbappe-Vinny project is just never going to work. Sure, you got Endrick returning next season from a phenomenal loan spell with Lyon, but you still got the issue of who's going to play on the left, because you have two players that prefer to play on the left. I don't think they're going to give up that position very easily. I'm serious, I don't think Real Madrid are ever going to get close to winning another Champions League unless they deal with the whole Mbappe-Vinny thing. And what I mean by that is someone's got to go, because this project has gone way too long. It just goes to show the whole Mbappe signing really didn't have like any kind of thought put into it. It had nothing to do with tactics. It had everything to do with reputation and aura, or I don't know, like I guess it'll look better in the TikTok edits. I don't know. Which, speaking of, if you guys remember from last season, I said that if Mbappe didn't win the Champions League in the next year, I would do the first ever player Legacy of Failures video. I'm still thinking about doing that, but because the World Cup is in 2 months, just give me some time. But it is so long overdue, considering the fact that when Mbappe left for Real Madrid, PSG, his former club, immediately went on to win the Champions League the very next season. Going back to transfers though, something really needs to be done about the recruitment at this club as well. Because beyond Mbappe, I don't really think this club does any kind of strategy whatsoever when it comes to any of their signings. They needed a new midfielder at the beginning of the season. They didn't even bother looking into anyone really. The club brought in a right back that can't defend, a center back with lots of potential, but they needed something of better quality to actually plug the issues in the backline. Another issue that needs to be addressed is that fucking medical team. It is so bad, you would think they were doing it on purpose. Just like the previous season, Real Madrid had another injury crisis. Pretty much like a month ago, they had 10 of their senior players out. It's gotten to the point that according to French news outlet L'Equipe, Kylian Mbappe personally told Florentino Perez he no longer wishes to be treated by Madrid's staff. Thing is though, this might go beyond just the players being treated half-assedly. Former Real Madrid nutritionist Itziar Gonzalez posted on her story in regards to the news about Mbappe's misdiagnosis saying, quote, "Although I don't know what's worse, this or them prescribing supplements based on free ChatGPT. I really hope that this isn't real news for the sake of every single player at that club, because if one of the richest clubs in the world is using ChatGPT for their medical team, we're all cooked." By the way, back in December of last year, that same nutritionist accused the medical staff of manipulating and threatening her, so, there's also that. Alright, but let's look at some positives, there's not many, but it's at least something to work upon here. Federico Valverde is by and large the best player for Real Madrid. It's not even close. Thibaut Courtois is still as phenomenal as always. Arda Güler could have an even better season next year after finally getting his opportunities, and also you got some promising youngsters like 18-year-old Thiago Pitach. Finally though, what about the manager situation? Because reportedly, Arbeloa will be out at the end of the season. Well, so far, Real Madrid has been expressing interest in Jurgen Klopp, but there's been no contact. Outside of him, the list of candidates include Zinedine Zidane, who will become the French national team coach, so we're crossing that off. There's also Didier Deschamps, who will be leaving the French national team, and also...
Last time on Keeping Up with the Madridistas. After bringing in a former traffic cone as manager in Alvaro Arbeloa, Real Madrid proceeded to almost immediately be eliminated in the Copa del Rey by a team in the second division. Oh, but Maxwell, Arsenal were also eliminated by a second division team. Ha ha ha, very funny. Would you still be laughing if you were turned into a vegetable though? From there, Real Madrid would experience multiple months of underwhelming performances, and as a result, their title hopes diminished earlier than it took Wolves to officially be relegated. And because this club continues to insist on the the Mbappe-Vinny project like a baby formula scammer, so too went Real Madrid's hopes of discovering that so-called remontada. And with their second straight Champions League quarterfinal crash, Real Madrid will more than likely go trophyless for a second straight season. Oh yeah, you guys remember that alt account that I used when my initial account was suspended for this tweet? Well, after the Real Madrid video was posted, I decided to turn that alt account into a parody of one of those Real Madrid news accounts. I tweeted this banger, and then my account went kablooey. Oh, by the way, today is actually the 1-year anniversary of the infamous Lisa incident. Anyways, Los Blancos returned home to play Alaves in front of the Bernabeu's lowest attendance this season, albeit still 60,000 in the stadium. All game long, the team was being booed, but just like how they reacted when it happened after the Supercopa final, the players once again showed their supporters they really could not give less of a shit about the club. But on top of all this, to make things even worse, the club suffered even more injuries. Arda Güler's season was officially over due to a muscle injury, while Eder Militao, who had come back from consecutive ACL injuries in the previous 2 seasons, was now out for the rest of the season with a hamstring problem. Then against Real Betis about 3 days later, even though the title race wasn't mathematically over, the team continued to play like that was very much the case. They were horrifically underwhelming all game long, the keeper had to save them on multiple occasions, and just like in the previous game, Los Blancos switched off in the last minute and conceded an equalizer. With that result, Real Madrid have now won just 1 of their last 6 games, and for probably a 6th time this season, Mbappe goes down with an injury. But it just kept getting worse because in the very next match versus Espanyol, just 10 minutes into that game, Ferland Mendy went down with an injury. And his unfortunate setback marks the 120th injury for Real Madrid in the last 2 seasons. It's like this club's medical staff specifically listens to advice from Michael Jackson's doctor and the free version of ChatGPT. Oh. But seriously, there seems to be so much malpractice when it comes to dealing with these injuries. There's been multiple instances this season of players being given the green light to play way too early into recovery, and then the injury gets so much worse because of it. I know we've talked about Madrid's issues with depth, and don't get me wrong, they still have a lot to improve there, but ain't nothing saving you if your team of doctors are motherfuckers from BetterHelp. Anyways, this isn't why I decided to make this video. As you've seen throughout this season, this club is filled with a bunch of petulant man-children who will throw a tantrum at their enabling father if they don't get their way. It's either that, or they'll act like a victim. During the second leg versus Bayern, Eduardo Camavinga picked up a yellow after a tactical foul within the first 20 minutes of being subbed on. 10 minutes later, he fouled someone else, but avoided the second yellow because it would have been too soft to send him off there. However, for some reason his brain hasn't worked this entire season, and he proceeded to time waste immediately after that foul and received a really stupid yellow card that pretty much cost his team the game. And following that match, multiple Real Madrid players were recorded saying that the decision was a disgrace, even though he was initially let off the hook. But funnily enough, we had seen nothing yet. After the loss versus Bayern, the dressing room quickly descended into a full-blown clown show. During the game versus Espanyol, when Ferland Mendy was subbed on, Fran Garcia was chosen to replace him instead of Alvaro Carreras. Carreras was then caught on camera laughing to himself about the decision. Now, while I personally think this is kind of a nothing burger, there have been sources saying that some of Madrid's staff have been complaining about Carreras' attitude and lack of professionalism. However, sources close to Carreras have rejected these claims. We're just getting started though. Center back Antonio Rudiger got into a heated argument in the dressing room with a teammate who was rumored to be Alvaro Carreras. Some sources said that it got physical, with Rudiger even slapping Carreras, although I feel like most have actually denied this claim. These rumors started to boil over, so Alvaro decided to release a statement on his socials. And at the end of this very obvious PR move, he said, quote, "Regarding the incident with a teammate, it was an isolated matter without importance that has already been resolved. My relationship with the entire team is very good." So basically, it was him. Now, before you start going at Carreras about a lack of professionalism or anything, it was actually confirmed that Rudiger was the one to instigate this. Which, you know, I'd have my doubts about that claim if it wasn't for the fact that this guy is a genuine psychopath on the pitch. Either way, the German defender later apologized for his behavior and treated his teammate and their family to some lunch. Then there's the issues surrounding the manager, Alvaro Arbeloa. Remember when I talked about Arbeloa playing some of the Youth Academy graduates? Pretty cool, right? I mean, this feels like a good first step in the right direction to getting Real Madrid where they want to be again.
don't forget the personalities we're dealing with here. Rumors have said that Arbeloa's inclusion of players like 18-year-old Thiago Pitarch in the starting lineup have upsetted many in the squad. There's also been rumors that players like Dani Carvajal and Dani Ceballos have felt neglected by Arbeloa. In all fairness, starting an 18-year-old in a match versus Bayern Munich in the Champions League quarterfinals, yeah, I wouldn't personally recommend that. But seeing how the other senior players have performed all season, this once again feels like another example of the entitlement these players have as a result of being coddled in an echo chamber for the past 2 seasons. As I'm writing this up, by the way, and please take this news worth a grain of salt unless there's more development on it, there are currently rumors of another fight that just broke out between Federico Valverde and Aurelio Tchouameni. If this shit is true, I swear to God, this whole team needs to be nuked off the face of the earth and built from scratch. Anyways, onto the elephant in the room. Kylian Mbappe. It was reported last month that the superstar got into an argument with one of the members of the coaching staff because when they were acting as an official, they called him offside. But that is very small compared to what I like to call Vacation Gate. As mentioned before, Mbappe went down with another injury against Real Betis last month, and a few days later, he was spotted on a trip in Italy. This guy, man, why the fuck are you going on a small vacation while all your teammates are still going to training and everything? The season isn't over. In fact, the title race technically isn't over. And you got El Clasico next week. Most fans were pissed when they found out about this. And understandably so. On some of Real Madrid's most recent posts, this graphic that says Mbappe out in English is being spammed all over the replies. There's also currently a petition with over 17 million signatures demanding Mbappe leave the club. That is 6 million more people than Belgium's entire population. Now, when Arbeloa was asked about this incident, he quickly removed himself from the situation, saying, quote, "In their free time, each player does what they see fit, and I don't get involved in that." Which makes me think, because, while yes, what Mbappe did was very inconsiderate to both his teammates and also just the fans of this club, and yes, he's very much a drama queen, and now we do very much know what was wrong with PSG before they won the Champions League. The club here is just as much at fault as he is. Because here's the thing, right? You are still above everyone else in this hierarchy. Why the hell are you allowing one of your players to go on a vacation, a small, tiny little vacation, in the middle of the season? It's not like they're in a hospital bed or in rehab or whatever. They're just chilling. Like, look at this picture. He's making out with his girlfriend. But this really sums up why things have gotten so toxic as of late. This club has no idea how to manage egos at all. In fact, they just enable this type of shit. And you know which manager they're currently rumored to have next season? Jose Mourinho. If Jose Mourinho becomes manager of Real Madrid next season, I can promise you that every single week is gonna feel like a reality show. One that's probably even better than the NBA. Do you know how impressive that would be? Every single passing day, Xabi Alonso must be watching from afar, feeling so vindicated right now. Whether he left on his own terms or was sacked by the club, he dodged a massive bullet here. According to Fabrizio Romano, by the way, within the next 24 hours, there's supposed to be even more that's gonna come out. If that's the case, I guess I'll make another video, but I'm pretty sure this is just gonna be the stuff because he just reports on stuff that's already been out there. But either way, did I ever mention to you guys that El Clasico is this weekend? Last time on Keeping Up with the Madridistas. After losing out on every trophy faster than Arsenal ever could, tension in the dressing room quickly turned into an actual soap opera. Manager Alvaro Arbeloa was being accused of neglecting some of his players. Antonio Rudiger and Alvaro Carreras got into an argument which may or may not have resulted in Carreras being slapped. Mbappe got into it with the coaching staff. And then the entire Real Madrid fan base. And then during the last episode, I mentioned reports of a fight between Aurelio Tchouameni and Federico Valverde. Now, remember when I told you all to be cautious about this and wait until further development would come out? Well, it's real. And it's funnier than anything else that has happened so far. It all started last Wednesday when during a session at Real Madrid's Valdebebas training ground, Aurelien Tchouaméni was on the receiving end of a hard challenge from Federico Valverde. The Frenchman was not too happy about this and confronted Valverde. This then created a whole ass argument that carried on into the dressing room, and it got so bad that the two almost came to blows with each other. However, later after the incident, the two players finally calmed down, talked things out, and then made hot, sweaty, passionate I'm kidding. The situation got so much worse after this. Less than 24 hours later, Valverde refused to shake Tchouaméni's hand. Then during the session itself, Valverde put in multiple hard challenges on Tchouaméni, to which the Frenchman did not react. The two were then put on the same team during another portion of training that involved players being split into two sides. It was then when reportedly Valverde told Tchouaméni, quote, he was lucky to avoid having to face him. Okay, let's pause for a second. What the hell could have possibly made Valverde this pissed off? Well, it turns out Valverde, in his soul, believed the person who leaked the initial altercation was Aurelien Tchouaméni. And while training finished a few hours in, Valverde certainly wasn't, as he constantly kept accusing and insulting Tchouaméni. But as the old saying goes, fuck around a little too much, and you'll find out.
The weak should quiver when a nice guy gets angry.
From there, everything quickly spiraled into a full-blown WWE match, with Aurelien probably beating Valverde's ass. Then, at some point during the brawl, Valverde busted his head on a table and lost consciousness. Tchouaméni deadass sent this man to the hospital with amnesia. I'm actually finished, bro. Now, if Fede was that mad about the initial altercation being leaked out to the public like that, I can only imagine how he was feeling when all of this came out. Because what followed was one of the funniest days to be on Twitter in a long time.
What happened? What happened? What happened? What happened?
Laffy, listen to me, brother. Hit the park gates, lad. You're gonna get the chopper on you, lad. Slow down, lad.
Get the tunes on, someone get the tunes.
Calm down, hit the right lane, slow down, slow right down, hit the left, slow right down, lad.
And all of this hilarity was spearheaded by Real Madrid news account Madrid Zone, who was one of the first to spread the news to the public. Now, I must stress this, just like any news organization, you cannot take everything that this account says seriously, especially since they mostly just translate reports that are coming out from Spanish media. But with that all said, this was like a car crash you couldn't keep your eyes away from. Because while the fight itself was hilarious, just primetime television, the chaos that followed this initial incident, whether it actually had anything to do with it or not, was comedy gold. 1 minute Madrid Zone tweeted about Valverde leaving training in a wheelchair. The next, news was coming out about how Ferland Mendy is thinking about retirement. Just today though, most sources have actually refuted that. All of a sudden though, we were being told that Real Madrid was having its own Gio Reyna incident. And all the while this was going on, it turned out that allegedly some of the players between themselves were calling manager Alvaro Arbeloa a cone. And once he found out about this, he just stopped playing them entirely. But apparently the animosity towards Arbeloa goes way deeper than that. Eduardo Camavinga was upset after being subbed out in one of Arbeloa's first games. Dani Carvajal confronted Arbeloa for benching him against Valencia. Alvaro Carreras wasn't too happy with Arbeloa either. Meanwhile, David Alaba was just flat out not even talking to the coach. And then there was Dani Ceballos, who decided to, quote, end his relationship with Arbeloa. Were they dating or something? It was also reported that there were, quote, gang wars in the Real Madrid dressing room. By the way, I love how Madrid Zone formats these tweets because it makes it about 10 times funnier. Just in, Tchouaméni is very sad. Breaking. Federico Valverde suffered from temporary amnesia after getting knocked out. He was forgetting things. There really is just like an art form to this. I don't know. Okay, but how the hell was any of this information even coming out in the first place? Like, there has to be some rat in the club that is leaking this information to the media, right? Well, after realizing this, Real Madrid made a trap to catch whoever the rat was. Now let me say that again. Real Madrid made a trap to catch whoever the rat was. The rat leaked the plan as well. You also had some accounts shitposting with their own made-up reports, like this one. That was from a Barcelona account, by the way, and speaking of, that fan base must have been having the time of their lives. I mean, shit, even the official Barcelona account chimed in with some shade. Enough of that, though. How did Real Madrid's circle respond to all this? Aurelian Tchouameni released an apology directed towards his teammates and the fan base, kept it simple enough. Valverde, on the other hand, though, had a bit more to say about the situation. He said, quote, "Clearly, someone here is spreading rumors, and with the season without titles, where Real Madrid is always under scrutiny, everything gets blown out of proportion." Valverde also added he didn't hit any teammate, nor did any teammate hit him, and he also, quote, accidentally hit a table, causing a small cut on his forehead that required a routine visit to the hospital. Real Madrid released a medical report on him a couple hours later that said he was diagnosed with cranioencephalic traumatism and would be out for 2 weeks. He might be the worst liar to ever do it. Now I'm just kind of wondering to myself, though, how is Real Madrid's North Korea propaganda TV show gonna show this incident?
Decided to provide a valuable lesson on how to protect the rim. Nikola Jokic was eager to learn, so he rushed over to give Jaden a hug of appreciation.
Anyways, once the dust finally settled, the club punished both Tchouameni and Valverde by fining them $500K each. Oh, you thought there was more? No, there's not. In fact, Arbeloa decided to start Tchouameni in Real Madrid's very next game versus Barcelona. No suspension or anything. This might be the funniest club in the world right now. And as pretty much everyone expected, Real Madrid would lose their 6th Clásico out of their last 7 played, and to add more salt to that gaping wound, that loss helped their bitter rivals clinch the title. Meaning for the first time since 2009-10, Real Madrid has officially gone trophyless for a 2nd straight season. By the way, you might be wondering, there's been quite a lack of Mbappe in this video. Where's he been? Well, during El Clásico, an injured Mbappe at home took a photo of the broadcast with the caption, "A la Madrid." Now, I want you to take a closer look at that scoreboard. Is he hate watching his own team? By the way, probably a good time to mention this. Real Madrid is thinking about bringing in Jose Mourinho next season. At this rate, man, there's a chance we get an episode of Keeping Up with the Madridistas every week next season. How does it keep getting worse?
Previously on Keeping Up with the Madridistas, a fallout was occurring in the dressing room with—
Oi! Shut up! Please, bro, I just want to make World Cup content. You will make more Real Madrid videos and you will like it.
A fallout was happening in the dressing room, with the most recent incident being a UFC fight between Aurelian Tchouameni and Federico Valverde. This was, by the way, a couple days before El Clásico. Real Madrid not only lost, but also granted Barcelona the league. Humiliation at the highest degree. After yet another season of going trophyless and the club in real turmoil, Real Madrid president and Dark Lord Florentino Perez organized an emergency conference out of the blue. It would be the first time that Florentino Perez would face the media since 2018 when Zinedine Zidane left. And because of that, there was a lot of speculation about what was about to happen. Was this to announce Jose Mourinho? Nah, that seems a bit too much for an emergency conference. Maybe he was gonna set the club straight and line up some really big changes. Or maybe he was just gonna retire. He is 79 and perhaps he's lost some of that sauce for success. It happens. Right off the bat, however, Florentino did his best Jordan Belfort impression and said, quote, "I'm sorry to tell you that I'm not going to resign." And what followed was a whole hour of the most incoherent and unhinged nonsense the whole world of football has ever heard. It had not even been 10 minutes, and already Perenyahu was basically losing his mind. With more paranoia than me during the 75mg edible incident, he was constantly talking about how there were figures, quote, in the shadows, conspiring to take him down. And Florentino wasn't about to sit there and let it all happen. He would go on to challenge anyone who dare slander his name with a random election. Also, a little bit off topic, but at one point, he mentioned that Real Madrid isn't a dictatorship. Well, okay, but what about the internal issues in the club? You know, like sporting director, recruitment, the medical staff. Well, Flomelander wasn't here to talk about sporting issues because that wasn't the problem anyways. Real Madrid's actual issues were because of the journalists. It was the Mole's fault. It was the Ultras' fault.
it was some dude with a Mexican accent's fault. Also, pretty much most of this conference was Florentino just beefing with journalists and media companies. The Dark Lord claimed La Liga made a news company that specifically paid writers to be anti-madridista. He then whipped out his phone, referenced an article from Spanish media outlet ABC that claimed he told people close to him that he was tired right before the conference, and then started going at an ABC journalist who didn't even write the piece. Yahoo then proceeded to go on this random 5-minute tangent about how his father gave him a subscription to ABC. They both enjoyed reading ABC a lot, but now that ABC is fake news, Florentino was gonna cancel his subscription because that's what his father would have always wanted. This is like if in the middle of doing an apology video, you just say something like, oh, by the way guys, I'm unsubscribing to Paramount Plus because they can't sync audio for shit. Like, why is this here? Florentino was not done with ABC just yet though. He went after another one of their articles criticizing Real Madrid that was written by a woman, and as this is an old Spanish figure in football, you know what's coming. There were 2 articles in the ABC today criticizing Real Madrid, one of them written by a woman who I don't even know if she knows anything about football. Christ above. But this wasn't the only bit of random misogyny this guy decided to pull. Later, when female journalist Lola Hernandez was trying to ask a question, he pointed at her saying, quote, "She's got every right to speak her mind." You know, fair enough. Hold on. And then he called the other journalists around her bloody ugly. Like, was that part necessary? Also, it appears that Flomlander is still the Japanese soldier that has been fighting for 29 years, because this guy is still talking about the European Super League 6 years later. For people not in the know, the ESL was basically a closed league consisting of 12 members across all of Europe that was proposed in 2021. It was the most blatant attempt by the richest owners in the world to widen the wealth disparity, but fortunately the ESL collapsed quicker than how it was formed. Oh, by the way, this was kind of around lockdown, which just makes this even more egregious. However, that hasn't stopped the former chairman, Florentino Perez, from constantly spewing out these bits of delusion that the Super League is still very much alive. Case in point, this conference where he talked about how the Super League would let children in Africa watch free football. It'd always be the children of Africa with these motherfuckers, I swear to God, man. Regarding the recent UFC match at Valdebebas, Florentino basically brushed it off, saying that players fight all the time, and the leaks coming out were actually worse than the fight itself. Which just goes to show what this whole conference was for in general. Florentino's reputation, and basically nothing else. Anytime a journalist dare criticize this guy, he would just talk about how Real Madrid is the greatest institution in the galaxy, 15 Champions League, 200 basketball titles, 14 billion La Liga titles. 15 Champions League! This motherfucker even referenced valuations of transfer market at one point. I also remember when I was watching like the dubbed version of the entire thing. By the way, great video, definitely watch. He started talking about how he was Real Madrid's savior because apparently before him, Real Madrid couldn't pay for, I don't know, player wages or the stadium or, I don't know, the electric bill. The president also continued to throw stones in a glass house talking about the Negrera case, which basically revolves around allegations of collusion between former vice president of the technical committee of referees and FC Barcelona. Yahoo said shit like, "We've won nothing this year, but I've only won 7 Champions Leagues and 7 La Ligas, and I could have won 14, but the others they stole from me." Flomlander also mentioned that the club was building a dossier to send to the courts. What does any of this have to do with the current crisis, man? By the way, throughout this hour-long mess, Madrid's press officer was practically begging for this to end. He apparently tried to bring the conference to a close on 2 separate occasions, to which Perez said, "I have nothing else to do this evening." Well, no shit, that's probably been the case all year, seeing how you're looking at what the newspapers are writing about you at any given moment. Easily my favorite quote from this schizo rant, though, had to be this. "They think they can get me out of Real Madrid, but they'll have to shoot me. We are Florentino, we carry the ref." Now, all the while this shit show was unfolding, this was what Mbappe was up to.
You will be surprised to know that sometimes in my day off, I love to do nothing and stay home.
But this conference could not have gone worse. Which maybe it could have, since the whole theme of this saga has been the fact that somehow everything just keeps getting worse. I remember when I first heard about this emergency conference, maybe like an hour before it occurred, and kind of thought to myself, well, maybe there'll be some genuine efforts for change here. I mean, it is an emergency conference. Whether that would be through Florentino or maybe someone else since he was going to resign, you know? Either way, there is going to be some change, and, you know, maybe I wouldn't be making a Real Madrid video for the rest of my life. But instead, the conference basically summed up everything that is wrong with Real Madrid right now. Again, not one mention. Actually, there was one mention. It was the players fighting, but then he just blamed the media for that. But seriously, not one mention about the sporting decisions. In fact, he basically said himself that none of that even mattered. Instead, he spent a whole hour acting like a victim. It's no wonder why the rest of the team does the same shit with the referee every single game.
Hold on one second, because Florentino actually did talk about the team's performance. He did it on an interview the very next day.
But of course, it wasn't the team's fault. It was actually the Club World Cup. Bayern and PSG were in the final tournament too, right? PSG were in the final. Oh, what's that more shit? Will this team fucking let me rest? So during Real's latest match versus Real Oviedo, Mbappe was booed while being subbed on. Meanwhile, Florentino Perez was beefing with the fans. There was actually banners saying Florentino out that were removed by the club. And the club basically claimed that they weren't doing censorship because the paper wasn't fire resistant. Okay, man. Oh yeah, and then after the game, there was a whole civil war between Mbappe and Arbeloa. This is the funniest week ever when it comes to Real Madrid. How does it keep getting funnier? But anyways, Mbappe said in a press conference that Arbeloa said he was the 4th striker. Arbeloa claimed that he never said that though. Also, Mbappe said he doesn't even watch Arbeloa's press conferences. Instead, he watches, quote, French TV. Bro, what the fuck is this club? And finally, Mbappe apparently said that Florentino Perez is the best president in the world, and Real Madrid are very lucky to have him. Well, no shit. Y'all were basically sexting each other before you even signed. Okay, that's enough. I'm putting this video out. Whatever happens afterwards, you're not seeing another video from me for like at least a week or two. I can't do this anymore. Now, here's the question. Is there a direction going forward for Real Madrid? I mean, maybe? The elections could have a more serious candidate, especially since the last ones had no one. And with the club in crisis, no trophies in 2 years, and also that press conference, the opponent could have a better chance. But I don't know, man. I don't think anything actually changes unless the guy actually resigns.